Hello and welcome to a Cavell Group podcast. I'm joined here by Patrick Watson, my fellow analyst, and I'm Finbar Begley, also analyst at the Cavell Group, here to talk to you about a new Microsoft report that Patrick has been working on. How are you doing, Patrick? Good day?
Very well, thanks, Finbar. Yes, good day. Busy as always, but yes, very good, thanks.
Excellent to hear. So we've been doing a lot of talking about Microsoft internally and with service providers and customers that we work with. Obviously, Microsoft has a lot of power in the market, has a lot of reach, and whenever they try a new technology, it makes everyone who's in that sector shake in their boots a little bit. Why is now the time that Cavell has decided to do a Microsoft report then?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The Microsoft's presence within obviously any technology sector, they're one of the main players within that space, but it's become particularly relevant within the cloud communication and collaboration sector because of the growing relevance of an application called Microsoft Teams, which is Microsoft's collaboration hub, which effectively enables remote working and collaboration by amalgamating a number of different features and functionality within a single application. So the main reason I've been brought into Cavell to focus on this, and the main reason I focused on Microsoft Teams in this latest report is Cavell did a survey on behalf of the Cloud Communications Alliance last year in 2019, where it asked the service provider community that we engage with about who they perceive as the greatest competitive threat. And the results came back overwhelmingly with over 68% of the cloud communications providers surveys stating that Microsoft were the greatest competitive threat. And as Cavell, we did another survey this year in 2020, and we asked the same question, and that threat perception has actually increased. So instead of 68%, it had gone up to near 74%, nearly three quarters of all the providers surveyed believe that Microsoft were the greatest competitive threat. So with this perception as Microsoft as a real threat to the industry, we wanted to understand more about Microsoft Teams, its positioning within the cloud communication space, its provision of services, and how it fits in with a service provider's portfolio, whether it is a competitive threat or whether it's something that should be looked at as more of an ally that could be integrated into as part of their platforms.
That sounds very interesting. I mean, 70 to 80% is pretty much resounding consensus, I would say, as much of a consensus as you're going to get that Microsoft really is the threat. And I mean, surely if you're any service provider, then you must be worried about the capabilities they can bring to the table and their purchasing powers. I guess were those maybe the main findings in the report?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of, I think in the second survey we did, it was only 3% of those surveyed said that they didn't see Microsoft as a competitor. And
Wow.
obviously, the main reason behind that, as you said, is Microsoft's got a global presence. It's got great experience in technology, and also it's got that huge, absolutely huge development and marketing might backed up by huge finances. So
Yeah,
yeah, those are
exactly.
the couple of the reasons that I think. And as they add capabilities into Teams in terms of calling capability and voice functionality and connection into the PSTN, the fixed telephony network, more and more service providers were starting to think, actually, this is something that's going to be competing directly with my offering.
Yeah, and I imagine direct competition is never something that you want, especially from a company that big. So, I mean, I suppose the main question is that if you're a service provider, what do you do in the face of this potential competition from Microsoft? Is there a way you can prepare for it, or is it just you're going to have to diversify your own business away from the competition, or how do you prepare if Microsoft start potentially or do you try and ally with Microsoft and resell their solution? Or is there an answer there?
Well, you're absolutely right. And what you asserted before is, I think there are very few service providers and probably vendors in the communication and collaboration space that think they can outcompete Microsoft in terms of development capabilities. So, what we've looked at in the report are we've overviewed the Teams application, but we've also tried to evaluate the different options for service providers, whether that is competing with Microsoft, and you could obviously do that by developing your own communication and collaboration platform, although it might be difficult to compete with Microsoft's level of investment. But you could also look to adopt a competitive platform. Maybe Cisco have WebEx Teams. There's obviously Slack, which is fundamental. A number of the over the top providers provide their own communication and collaboration solutions, people like 8x8 or Ring Central. But we also looked at the options for service providers in terms of integrating Microsoft Teams as part of their portfolio. And the interesting aspect there, calling capability within Microsoft Teams. So the ability to have a landline number associated to your Microsoft Teams account and make calls through the PSTN network is enabled in one of two ways. Microsoft have set up in various regions their own carrier capabilities so that they can provide a complete one-stop shop for an end user business and provide them with the application in Teams itself, a phone system effectively, which is called very inventively Microsoft Phone System, and also the connection to the wider telephony network through calling plans, which are provisioned by Microsoft. The other way of doing that is for a third party provider to provide connectivity to the fixed telephony network via a process called direct routing, which involves using a certified session border controller. And then a third party can either provide an end customer with access to the network or access to a third party phone system and then through to the network. So there is real potential here for service providers to utilize Microsoft Teams and integrate it into their own portfolios, which they provide to end customers.
So it sounds like Microsoft have, I wouldn't say left the door open, but certainly left a window or some sort of smaller entry in so that service providers don't have to compete. They can partner and sell Microsoft as their new service platform. Because I mean, all service providers, most of them haven't developed their own solution. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I think most of them are reselling a white labeled version of another company's platform or something like that. And it seems to me like that could just shift to a branded Microsoft resell where they enable some of the other functionality on a local basis and in that way become a partner rather than a competitor.
No, no, you're absolutely right. So the majority of providers do use white label solutions or third party solutions from vendors in the space. And in fact, it's slightly more than that. So Microsoft, although they have set up in, I think it's 11 regions at the moment, their own telco capability so they can provide all the solutions to an end user, that's actually a very small proportion of teams. So during this report, we've conducted lots of qualitative and lots of quantitative research in both the EU and the US to try and find out how Microsoft are configuring Teams with connection to the PSTN network to end customers. And from the research that we've done, we believe that the majority, probably up to 80% of those Teams clients with voice calling capability are provisioned by direct routing rather than via Microsoft directly. So Microsoft have really opened this up and they're going to rely on the communications industry to enable this functionality into Teams. So although they do have their own capability of providing the one-stop shop, it's much more likely that they're going to look to leverage the existing customer base and telco experience of service providers and telcos in the cloud communication space to really enable that functionality.
I guess that makes sense. I mean, even if you are Microsoft and you do have this massive marketing engine, you don't have that local presence and that existing customer base and relationships that service providers have with all of their existing communication partners. So, I mean, it clearly makes more sense. You want to be developing this solution, and Microsoft's strength is software development and not communications, arguably. So, why wouldn't they take advantage of the channel provided by service providers in say the UK, for example?
No, that's absolutely right. And I think Microsoft realized the pain of trying to become a telco in these 11 regions. And although initially it did look as if that capability was going to be expanded, at the moment we've got no roadmap for any additional regions coming on board. There don't appear to be any plans from Microsoft to continue to expand this. Obviously, they're going to leverage the investment they've already made in the initial regions, but it doesn't look like they're going to be looking to expand their own telco capability any further. They're going to look for service providers in the existing regions, but also in new geographic regions to enable that PSTN connectivity calling capability into Teams.
That's very interesting. So the initial picture really of massive potential competition really once you analyze it doesn't really seem to be the same image that we're getting across. Instead there might be a picture of massive opportunity rather than competitive threat. So I mean, with all this development from Microsoft, with Teams coming into the marketplace, what does that mean for the future of cloud communications? What does that mean for the future of the industry?
Well, it's interesting you talk about the potential for competition, and I think the other reason, and it comes back to your initial question about why service providers are considering Microsoft as a threat. Microsoft has been hugely successful in the productivity application suite with
Yeah.
Microsoft Office and then the subscription version Office 365 controlling the vast majority of the market. I mean, I've seen various numbers, but it's probably over 80% of the productivity suite. I mean, really, it's only the Google suite of applications that competes with it. And generally, most businesses use Microsoft Office or the subscription service in Office 365 to provision productivity tools. So what service providers were starting to realize was if the vast majority of my customers use Office 365 or Office, and Microsoft Teams is available for free within most of the Office 365 packages, apart from the most basic ones, they're going to start to realize actually, why am I paying for a supplementary communication application here when I potentially get Microsoft Teams for free? I mean, at the moment, Microsoft Office 365 has got about 230 million users. That was at the last time we got any figures. I think probably with what's going on currently globally, that's probably risen significantly. And we were expecting it to exceed 250, move towards 300 million users globally this year. So if Microsoft's got 300 million users on a cloud subscription platform, probably a good majority of those will have Teams included for free. There's a real question for customers as why I would pay for additional communication and collaboration services from a third party when I've potentially got that included within my Office 365 package. So it's that threat, that presence on the desktop already that is encouraging service providers to either work with Microsoft or react and look for options to try and compete against them.
Yeah, I think that that paints a very sort of interesting and detailed picture and opportunity. If people do have more questions, though, after reading your fantastic report, where can they get in touch to find out more?
Well, thank you for the fantastic report, Pug. So, obviously, the report's available. If you go to the Cavell Group website, the new website, you can go to the web store and you can access the report there. If anyone's got any questions or any interesting insights as well, we're always keen at Cavell to get insights from the industry. Obviously, all any knowledge that we have is generated from the service providers and vendors and customers within the space. So, absolutely, get in touch with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. You can find me at Patrick Watson. But on the new Cavell Group website, there's a very straightforward function. If you want to speak to an analyst, if you've got any particular questions, if you've got any insight that you think we've missed in the report or any of our reports, do go to that, get in touch with an analyst, and come and speak to us and let us know your thoughts.
Right, fantastic, and thank you for coming to speak to me today, Patrick.
My pleasure, Finbar.